My parents spent years bailing my brother out of trouble. When they retired, they told me it was now my duty to keep supporting him. I refused and they took me to court, claiming I abandoned the family. I'm 28 male, grew up in one of those families where the favoritism was so obvious, you could have written a textbook about it. My older brother Kevin, he's 31 now, was the golden child who could literally burn the house down and my parents would blame the matches. Meanwhile, I was the family afterthought, the, oh right, we have another one kid. Growing up in suburban Ohio, I figured out pretty early that there were two sets of rules in our house, Kevin's rules and everybody else's rules. Kevin could stay out till midnight on school nights because he was socializing and building life skills. I had to be home by 8 because I needed structure. Kevin could quit every activity he ever started because he was finding himself. I had to stick with band for 4 years, even though I hated the clarinet, because commitment builds character. The double standards were so obvious it was almost funny almost. Kevin wrecked my dad's car at 17, drove it straight into a mailbox while texting, and my parents bought him a used Honda 2 weeks later so he could learn from his mistake in a safer car. I got a B+ on a chemistry test once and my mom sat me down for a 2-hour talk about wasted potential. A B+. I still remember her face like I'd personally let down the entire family bloodline over a chemistry quiz. School stuff was a whole other level. Kevin would pull average grades, maybe a C++ on a good semester. Every report card got treated like he'd won a Nobel Prize. Dinner out, something new told him how proud they were of his effort. Meanwhile, I'm pulling straight A's and the most I ever got was a nod. Once I made honor roll for the 6th straight semester and my mom goes, "Well, you're supposed to do well." Thanks, Mom. Real inspiring. Holidays were always the Kevin show. Christmas morning looked like Santa had a personal grudge against me. Kevin's pile of presents could block a doorway. I'd get maybe 3 or 4 things, socks, a calculator, gift cards to stores I never went to. One year I got a toolkit while Kevin unwrapped a gaming console, the latest phone, and somehow a dirt bike. My mom's explanation, Kevin needed more because he appreciates things differently. I still don't know what that means. I'm pretty sure I would have appreciated a dirt bike just fine. Birthdays were the same deal. Kevin's parties were events, rented places, catered food, everybody invited. Mine were an afterthought. "Do you even want a party this year?" my mom would ask, making it real clear that the answer she wanted was no. By 14, I just stopped expecting anything and told them not to bother. Easier to have 0 expectations than to keep getting let down. My dad was Kevin's biggest fan. Every average thing Kevin did got celebrated like it was historic. Kevin made JV soccer as a sophomore. Dad threw a party. Kevin graduated high school with a 2.1 GPA. Dad cried actual tears. When I graduated salutatorian and got a full academic scholarship to Ohio State, my dad patted me on the shoulder and said, "Good job," before asking if I'd seen Kevin's new sneakers. I had a full ride to a major university, and my dad was more interested in shoes. Here's the thing about being the kid who doesn't matter: you learn to stop expecting stuff. You stop hoping your parents show up. You stop waiting for someone to notice what you did. You just put your head down and handle it yourself because nobody else is going to. That's what I did. Worked part-time jobs all through high school, saved every cent. Counted down the days till I could get out. Had a job bagging groceries at 14, moved up to stocking. By 16, I was at a local hardware store where the old guys taught me actual useful stuff, plumbing basics, electrical, how to fix things instead of replacing them. Those dudes showed me more attention in 2 years than my parents showed in 16. One of them, this retired plumber named Carl, told me I had a good head and good hands and that I'd go far if I stayed out of trouble. That one comment meant more to me than anything my parents ever said. Actually, I think about Carl sometimes and wonder if he knows how much that mattered. Probably not, but it did. College was my exit strategy. 4 years of engineering at Ohio State, graduated with honors, landed a good job at a manufacturing plant as a mechanical engineer. While Kevin was bouncing between minimum wage gigs and asking our parents for loans that everyone knew were just gifts, I was building something: real career savings and actual future. By 25, I'd saved enough for a down payment on a modest 3-bedroom house. Nothing crazy, but it was mine. Every mortgage payment reminded me that I did this by myself. No handouts, no loans that magically disappear, just work and planning. Signing those closing documents was one of the best days of my life. Kevin's life, meanwhile, was a revolving door of disasters. Couldn't hold a job more than 6 months. He'd get fired for showing up late, attitude problems, creative differences with management at a fast food place. Always somebody else's fault. The manager was on a power trip. The schedule was unreasonable. The job was beneath him anyway. And then there's the housing history. Eviction 1 happened when Kevin was 24. Rented a studio, stopped paying rent after 3 months because he disagreed with the landlord's energy. I don't know what that means either. The landlord had the nerve to ask for rent on time, and Kevin thought that was aggressive. Parents paid off his back rent. He moved home. That first return lasted about 8 months. Kevin did nothing the whole time, no job search, no anything, just gaming till 4 in the morning and sleeping till noon. Parents complained to each other about it but never said a word to Kevin. He's recovering from a difficult experience, my mom would say. A difficult experience of not paying bills. What a struggle. Eviction 2 came at 27. He'd moved in with a girlfriend named Ashley. Nice girl, way too good for him. She worked 2 jobs while Kevin played video games 14 hours a day and contributed nothing but complaints about how tired she looked. When she finally kicked him out, he owed her 3 months of utilities. Parents covered those too. Welcome home, Kevin again. Second homecoming was worse. Kevin had developed an attitude about it like he was doing our parents a favor by being there. He'd eat their food, run up their bills, contribute nothing, and then complain about the grocery brands my mom bought. These aren't the right chips. Dude, you're a freeloader. You don't get chip preferences. Eviction 3 was last year. He'd talked a buddy named Trevor into letting him stay rent-free in exchange for helping with chores. Kevin's idea of helping with chores was eating all the food and never cleaning anything. Trevor gave him 2 weeks' notice. Kevin stretched it to 2 months till the guy changed the locks while Kevin was out. Every single time my parents acted like Kevin was some victim of bad luck, wrong place, wrong time, the economy, anything except the obvious truth that their son was a grown man who'd never learned what a consequence felt like because they'd shielded him from every single one. After Eviction 3, Kevin moved back home. My parents were pushing late 50s, supposedly planning for retirement, and here's their 30-year-old son camped out in his childhood bedroom like nothing changed since high school. They'd call me to vent about it. Kevin's having a hard time. Kevin just needs to find his path. Kevin would thrive with the right opportunity. The opportunity Kevin needed was a wake-up call, but my parents couldn't give him that. They'd spent 3 decades making sure he never had to grow up. And now they were shocked that he hadn't. I stayed out of it, sent cards on holidays, called on birthdays, visited maybe twice a year for awkward dinners where Kevin would ask to borrow money and I'd say no. My relationship with them was polite but distant. That was fine by me. I'd made peace with who they were a long time ago. About 8 months ago, my parents dropped a bomb at one of our rare family dinners. They were selling the house, moving to a condo in Arizona near my mom's sister. Desert retirement. Sounded reasonable. They were late 50s. House was too big. Arizona made sense. I said, "Congrats, good plan." Then the other shoe dropped hard. So obviously Kevin will need somewhere to stay. My mom said it the same way you'd mention the weather, like it was just a fact of life. We thought since you have that extra bedroom, he could move in with you temporarily just until he gets on his feet. I almost choked on my water. My extra bedrooms were a home office where I did freelance consulting work, a side gig that brought in an extra $15,000 a year, and a guest room I used maybe 3 times a year for actual guests. Neither of those was a Kevin storage unit. That's not going to work for me. My dad did that face, the one where he can't understand why I have my own opinions about my own house. Confusion mixed with irritation. Why not? You have the space. Having space and wanting a roommate are 2 different things. Kevin and I don't have a compatible lifestyle. What I meant was, I pay my bills and shower regularly, but I was trying to be nice about it. Kevin was across from me scrolling through his phone the whole time like a conversation about his entire living situation didn't concern him. Let everybody else figure it out. Classic. It would only be temporary, my mom said, 6 months, maybe a year, just until Kevin saves up. 6 months to a year. Kevin had lived rent-free with our parents off and on for basically a decade and never saved a dime. Any money he got went straight to video games, delivery food, and whatever else he wanted in the moment. The idea that he'd suddenly develop financial discipline at my house was insane. I'm sorry, but no. I'm not in a position to take on a roommate. Corporate speak, because direct honesty with my parents just starts arguments. The dinner got weird after that. They kept coming at it from different angles. Kevin could be a positive influence on me. Wait, no, I could be a positive influence on Kevin. He could help around the house. The mental picture of Kevin helping around my house was honestly hilarious. This was a guy who once went 3 weeks without doing laundry because he kept forgetting. He'd help around my house the way a tornado helps a trailer park. I held firm. No. When I left that night, my parents looked at me like I'd betrayed them. Kevin shrugged and went back to his phone. Typical. My parents moved to Arizona about 4 months ago. They found Kevin near their old house and paid first 3 months rent plus security deposit. A going-away present. A final helping hand. You can guess what happened. Kevin lasted 2.5 months. Got evicted for noise complaints, property damage, and not paying rent once the prepaid months ran out. He'd been having loud people over multiple nights a week, keeping neighbors up till 3 a.m. He put a hole in the bathroom wall, claimed it was already weak, and he'd barely touched it. Landlord had photos showing a fist-sized hole that definitely wasn't there at move-in. Eviction number 4. My parents called me the day it happened. Mom was practically hysterical. Kevin had nowhere to go. He'd end up on the streets. Dad grabbed the phone and used his serious voice, the one he thinks sounds commanding but really just sounds like he's constipated. You need to let Kevin stay with you. Not asked, told, no. He's your brother. He's family. This is what family does. Family doesn't mean I have to let someone move into my house against my will. Kevin is 31. He needs to figure out his own situation. Mom took the phone back. How can you be so cold after everything we've done for you? That one almost made me laugh. Everything they'd done for me, I could count it on one hand, and most of the fingers would stay down. The call turned into guilt trips and accusations. I was abandoning family. I was punishing Kevin for making mistakes like 4 evictions and trashed apartments were just little whoopsies that happened to everyone. I told them my answer was final, ended the call, and blocked their numbers for 48 hours because I needed a break. Over the next few weeks, they sent everybody after me. Relatives I hadn't talked to in years, suddenly calling to tell me how disappointed they were. My aunt texted me a Bible verse about brotherly love. Some cousin I'd met maybe twice tried to friend me on social media to keep the guilt campaign going. Even my grandma called, and I actually love her to gently suggest family helps family. I told her the full story, and she seemed to get it even if she still wanted me to keep my heart open. Kevin called a few times too. Different approach, less guilt, more promises. He'd changed, he'd learned, he'd get a job right away, he'd pay rent, he'd be the perfect roommate. I'd barely know he was there, right? The guy who can't keep a job 6 months was going to transform into a model citizen. Sure, I said no every time. My house, my decision, edit. People asking why I don't just let him stay one night, because one night with Kevin becomes 1 week, which becomes 1 month, which becomes, I thought we agreed I could stay. I've seen this movie 4 times. I know how it ends. Edit 2. Yeah, my relationship with my parents has pretty much always been like this. I stopped expecting things from them a long time ago. It sounds sad when I type it out, but honestly, it's just how it is. So OP said no and thought that would be the end of it, but his parents weren't done. Not even close. They actually took legal action over this. I couldn't believe it when I first read it either. Let's keep going. Update 1 posted 3 weeks later. Alright, Reddit, buckle up, because this got so much worse or better depending how you look at it. A lot of you said in the comments that my parents wouldn't actually go through with legal action. You were wrong. These people are committed to the delusion. For the new people, parents moved to Arizona, wanted me to take in my 31-year-old brother who's been evicted 4 times. I said no. They sent the entire extended family after me. That was the original post. Here's what happened after. About 6 weeks ago, I got a letter in the mail that made me laugh out loud from a law office I'd never heard of, informing me that my parents were considering legal action against me for, and I'm reading this word for word, familial abandonment and breach of implied familial duty. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. My parents were threatening to sue me because I wouldn't let a grown man live in my house. The letter had fancy fonts and official-looking paper, but the actual argument was pure fantasy. Called a lawyer friend from college, he was just as confused as me. Familial abandonment isn't really a thing in civil law, he said, not the way they're describing it. There's no legal rule that says you have to house your adult brother. This sounds like somebody either gave them terrible advice or they found a lawyer willing to cash a check for a case going nowhere. He said I should respond through an attorney to make it clear I wasn't scared. So I hired a local guy named Richard who does general civil stuff. Richard sent back a letter that basically said there's no legal basis for any of this and any lawsuit would be frivolous. I figured that'd kill it. Normal people would read that and back off. My parents are not normal people. 2 weeks later, I got served actual court papers. My parents were suing me for $50,000 in damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress and negligent failure to provide familial support. 50 grand because I wouldn't give my brother a bedroom. The claims were wild. They said my refusal to house Kevin caused them severe emotional trauma and forced them to incur significant financial expenses to support Kevin themselves. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. They'd been supporting Kevin his entire adult life. They'd covered every eviction, every unpaid bill, every trashed apartment. But somehow my saying no was the thing causing them financial pain. My lawyer reviewed it and said what I already knew. This is garbage. There's no cause of action here. They're suing you for not being generous enough with your own property. No judge is going to take this seriously. But we still had to respond, still had to do the paperwork, still had to show up. The discovery. This is where things got really interesting. My lawyer requested documents from my parents related to their claims, financial records, anything showing the significant expenses they supposedly had because of me. What we got back was a goldmine. First, bank statements showing my parents had been funneling money to Kevin for years. Not just emergencies, regularly monthly transfers of $500, $800, sometimes $1,200, going back at least 5 years based on what they gave us. Kevin wasn't just asking for help now and then, he was basically on payroll. Over 5 years, they'd sent him roughly $45,000, maybe more. That's a down payment on a house. That's a graduate degree. Instead, it went to funding Kevin's extended teenage years. But the emails were the real prize. There were messages between my parents talking about their retirement plan. And in these emails, they openly discussed how they expected me to take over Kevin's support once they left for Arizona. They talked about my house having plenty of room, about me being financially stable enough to handle it. They even ran the numbers on how much they'd save if Kevin lived with me instead of on his own. One email from my mom to my dad literally said, once he settled at his brother's place, we can finally stop worrying about the monthly payments. They weren't suing me because their feelings were hurt. They were suing me because I wrecked their plan to make me pay for Kevin. The whole lawsuit wasn't about family duty, it was about money. My lawyer was practically buzzing when he showed me these. They handed us the entire case. He said this proves the motivation was financial, not emotional. They wanted to transfer Kevin's expenses to you, and when you said no, they tried to force it through court. We built our defense around that, documented Kevin's eviction history, got statements from former landlords about the damage. One guy sent a full breakdown of how it cost him $3,000 to make Kevin's old apartment livable again after he left. We pulled Kevin's employment history showing he never kept a job more than a few months. Put together a complete picture of exactly why any sane person would say no to housing him. My lawyer also sent questions to my parents asking them to point to any specific law that required me to house my adult brother. Their answers were vague, emotional arguments, feelings, nothing legal. They couldn't name a single statute or precedent because there isn't one. The whole thing was obviously going nowhere, but my parents wouldn't drop it. They'd committed, and their pride wouldn't let them quit. Court date was set for a Tuesday in early fall. Those emails are unbelievable. They literally put their plan in writing, dump Kevin on OP and save $1,000 a month, and then handed those emails over in discovery. You can't make this stuff up. All right, let's get to the court date because this is where Kevin accidentally becomes the hero of the story. Update 2 posted 2 weeks later. I'm back. Court happened. It went exactly how you'd hope it would go if you've been following this saga. Actually, it went better than that because Kevin, the guy who's caused every single problem in this story, finally did something useful by accident, obviously. But still, if you're just joining parents sued me for $50,000 because I wouldn't let my 4 times evicted 31-year-old brother live in my house. Discovery revealed their real plan was to dump Kevin's expenses on me so they could retire in peace. Now we're in an actual courtroom over this. Court day Tuesday morning, early fall. I took the day off, showed up in my best business casual looking like the responsible adult I'd spent my whole life trying to become. Parents were already there with Kevin. Mom wouldn't look at me. Dad glared like I'd insulted his ancestors. Kevin was on his phone, obviously. Their lawyer was this older guy who looked like he'd checked out of his career about 10 years ago and was just running out the clock till retirement. Kept shuffling papers and checking his watch. The judge was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who looked like she'd seen every type of family garbage imaginable and was thoroughly done with all of it. When she looked through the case file before we started, I caught her raising an eyebrow. Not a great sign for my parents. Their lawyer went first, laid out the case with all the energy of someone reading a grocery list. Talked about familial bonds and moral obligations and the trauma of watching a family member turn their back on blood. Heavy on the feelings, zero actual legal arguments. Never once pointed to a law or a case that said I had to house my brother. Then Richard went. He was clean and organized about it, explained there's no legal requirement for an adult to house an adult sibling. Walked the judge through Kevin's eviction history, the property damage, the rent he never paid. Then he pulled out the emails where my parents spelled out their plan to dump Kevin on me. Your Honor, Richard said the plaintiffs aren't looking for justice. They're trying to make my client pay for another adult's living expenses. There's no legal basis for this. They're using the court to override my client's right to decide who lives in his own home. The judge did not look impressed with my parents' side. Asked their lawyer directly, can you cite any legal authority that says a person has to provide housing to an adult sibling? The guy stammered something about common law traditions and the spirit of family unity. The judge wasn't buying it. The judge wanted to hear from Kevin directly. Made sense. He's the person at the center of this whole mess. He got sworn in and sat down looking annoyed that he had to put his phone away for 5 minutes. Their lawyer tossed him some easy questions. How long had he been looking for housing? What were his job plans? How had my refusal affected him? Kevin's answers were so Kevin, it was almost art. He'd been exploring options. He was between opportunities job-wise. My refusal had really hurt because I was supposed to have his back. Then Richard got his turn started with the eviction history, walked through each one. Kevin tried to downplay everything, but the paperwork was right there. 4 evictions, damaged property, unpaid rent pattern clear as day. Then Richard asked the question that blew it all up. Kevin, where are you currently living? Kevin shrugged. With my buddy Dave. He's letting me crash on his couch until this gets sorted out. So you're not homeless. You're not living on the streets like your parents claimed in their filing. Kevin actually looked confused. No. I've been at Dave's for like 2 months. It's fine. The judge's eyebrows went up. Their lawyer looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. Richard kept going. And what do you understand to be the purpose of this lawsuit? Why are your parents suing your brother and Kevin? God bless this idiot just shrugged and said it. I mean, it's pretty simple. My parents are on a fixed income now, and they can't keep paying for my stuff. They figured if they got the court to make my brother take me in, they'd save like $1,000 a month or whatever. Plus, my brother's got that house, and he's not even using all the rooms, so it's kind of a waste anyway. Dead silence. Kevin just admitted under oath that the entire lawsuit was a money scheme. Not emotional distress, not family duty, just make my brother pay for me so my parents don't have to. My parents looked like they wanted to evaporate. Their lawyer closed his eyes. I think he was praying. The judge had this expression that was half annoyed and half like she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. So let me make sure I understand, the judge said. Your parents filed this lawsuit because they wanted to save money by having your brother cover your living expenses. Kevin nodded like it was totally normal. Yeah, pretty much. They said they couldn't afford to keep helping me, and my brother had plenty of money to take over something about fair share of the family burden or whatever. I could have hugged him. 31 years of his nonsense doing nothing but cause problems, and he finally did something useful. Blew up their entire case because he couldn't keep his mouth shut for 5 minutes. The judge called a recess. When we came back, she got right to it. I've heard enough. The plaintiffs have failed to establish any legal basis for their claims. There's no law that requires an adult to house an adult sibling. The emotional distress claims are clearly a cover given the testimony that the real motivation was financial. She looked at my parents. What I find especially troubling is the attempt to use this court to force one family member to pay for another. That's not what the legal system is for. Your son, she pointed at me, has every right to decide who lives in his home. The fact that your other son is family does not change that. Case dismissed with prejudice. She ordered my parents to pay my legal fees since the lawsuit was frivolous. Total came to about $8,000. Mom was crying when they left. Dad looked like he wanted to break something. Kevin was already back on his phone, unbothered by the fact that his testimony just cost his parents $8,000. I walked out feeling lighter than I had in months. Edit people asking if Kevin did it on purpose to sabotage them. No, Kevin is just Kevin. He genuinely did not understand that what he said was a problem. He thought he was being helpful by explaining the situation clearly. That is the funniest part. Kevin just casually torched his parents' case under oath because he genuinely thought he was being helpful. That might be the best moment I have read on this subreddit in a long time. But the aftermath is where things get even crazier. Let us finish this final update posted 5 weeks after court. Last update, Reddit. A lot has happened in the 5 weeks since court, and I figured you all deserved the ending. It has been a ride. If you are new, go read the other posts first. Short version is, my parents sued me for $50,000 because I would not house my brother. My brother blew up their case by admitting under oath it was just a money grab, and the judge dismissed it and stuck them with my legal fees. Here is everything since the fee situation. First thing, my parents sent a letter asking me to waive the $8,000 legal fee award. 4 pages handwritten by my mom. Wall-to-wall guilt. They are on a fixed income. They cannot afford this. She listed their mortgage, car payments, and how much they had spent on Kevin over the years like that was somehow my problem. The letter ended with, "We are still your parents and we deserve your respect." I did not respond. Sent it straight to Richard. He wrote back a formal response. Judgment stands. Payment expected within 30 days. They missed the deadline. Did not pay a dime. Richard filed a motion to enforce. Court granted it. They now have a garnishment order on my dad's pension. About $450 a month automatically taken out until the $8,000 is covered. My mom called screaming about how I was stealing from their retirement. I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Called me ungrateful, called me cold, said I was destroying the family. I waited until she stopped to breathe and reminded her she could have avoided all of this by not suing me. She hung up. Kevin gets kicked out again. Kevin got booted from Dave's place. Lasted almost 3 months, which is actually his personal best. So congrats, I guess. Dave found out about the eviction history from somebody who knew somebody at the courthouse. Gave Kevin a week. Kevin called me asking for just a few nights while he figured things out. I said no. He called me a bunch of names and hung up. Then Kevin showed up at my house. Just appeared on my doorstep last Tuesday around 9 p.m. with a duffel bag looking pathetic and wet from the rain. Said he had nowhere else to go. Dave kicked him out. Parents were in Arizona. He had even tried calling Ashley, the ex-girlfriend, and she laughed and hung up on him. I stood in the doorway and told him it was not my problem. He started yelling, called me every name he could think of, said I was supposed to be his brother, said blood was supposed to mean something, said I owed him because I got all the good genes and had it easy. That last part almost made me laugh. A neighbor poked his head out to see what was happening. I waved to let him know we were fine. Kevin noticed and lowered his voice, but his face was still red. He switched to begging, said he would sleep on the porch, just needed one night, he would be gone by morning. I said no and closed the door. He started banging on it. I called the non-emergency police line to document it. He must have seen me through the window because he grabbed his bag and took off before they showed up. The officer took my statement and suggested a doorbell camera. Ordered one that night. Mom and Dad fly back. My parents flew back from Arizona. They are staying at a motel near their old house trying to help Kevin get on his feet. My mom called to tell me this like I was supposed to feel guilty about it. I asked how the retirement condo was going. She said they might have to sell it to cover Kevin's expenses. I said that sounded like a personal problem. She called me heartless and hung up. The intervention. Last weekend Saturday morning I was getting ready for work when I heard the doorbell, looked at the camera, all three of them standing on my porch, parents plus Kevin. They had driven all night from their motel. My dad was holding a folder. My mom had mascara streaked down her face. Kevin looked annoyed to be awake before noon. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, was not letting them in, pointed out the Ring doorbell was recording everything. My dad went into a speech he had clearly practiced in the car. Family responsibility, blood thicker than water, how I was tearing everybody apart with my selfishness. He had papers showing their financial situation, bank statements, bills, spreadsheets of what they had spent on Kevin. He wanted me to see how much they had sacrificed. Said if I just let Kevin stay 6 months, maybe a year, they could save the condo. They could retire in peace. My mom jumped in between sobs. How she carried me for 9 months. How she stayed up when I was sick as a kid. How she drove me to school, making it sound like basic parenting was some kind of extraordinary favor I owed her forever. Kevin stood behind them, scrolling through his phone, completely checked out of the conversation about his own future. I let them go. Took about 10 minutes. Did not interrupt once. Then I asked one question. Did you bring any documents showing what you sacrificed for me? My dad opened his mouth closed. It looked at my mom. She looked at the ground. Kevin actually laughed. Dude, seriously. I kept my eyes on my parents. I told them this was the last time we were having this conversation. I was not going to house Kevin. I was not going to fund him. I was not going to bail him out ever. If they wanted to keep enabling a 31-year-old man who could not hold a job or pay rent, that was on them. But it was not going to be my problem. Not through guilt, not through games, and definitely not through the legal system again. My mom started doing the heaving sobs, the ones that used to wreck me when I was a kid. It did not work anymore. Kevin rolled his eyes and mumbled something about me being such a tool. Then under his breath said I had always been the difficult one. Coming from him, that was almost artistic. My dad turned that shade of red I have known my whole life. Started to say something about how I would regret this, how I would be alone when I was old, how nobody would be there for me because I was not there for family. I cut him off. I said they could either accept my decision and we could have some kind of relationship going forward, or they could keep pushing and I would cut contact completely. No calls, no letters, no showing up. Their choice. Final offer. My dad threw the folder on the ground. Papers everywhere across my porch. Bank statements, bills, all those documents he wanted me to look at. He stormed to the car without picking any of it up. Mom followed, still crying, shooting me a look that was supposed to make me feel bad. Kevin flipped me off and walked away, already on his phone, before he made it to the car. They peeled out of my driveway like they were in an action movie. I picked up the folder and all the papers went inside and put the whole thing in the recycling bin without reading a single page. That was 5 days ago. I have not heard from any of them since. My house is quiet. Savings are good. The promotion I got, senior engineer with a 15% raise, starts next month. I found out about it the same day Kevin got kicked out of Dave's place. Sometimes the timing just works out. Got a date this weekend with a woman from my gym who laughed when I told her the short version of this whole mess. Oh, one last thing I keep thinking about. My grandma called again a couple days after the porch thing. She had heard the full story from my aunt, who got the dramatic version from my mom. Grandma wanted my side. I told her everything. The emails where they planned to dump Kevin on me, the lawsuit, Kevin's testimony, all of it. She was quiet for a really long time. Then she said she was disappointed in my dad for how he had raised Kevin and how he had treated me. Said she had tried to warn them years ago about the enabling. Nobody listened. That conversation meant a lot, honestly. Still thinking about it. Anyway, life is good. Edit. Yeah, I know. Blood is thicker than water, and the full original quote actually means the opposite of how people use it. I have heard that about 40 times in the comments. You are all correct. You are also all saying the exact same thing, but I appreciate it. Edit 2. People asking about the date. Went great. She thinks the doorbell camera story is hilarious. Second date is already planned. Not jinxing it though, so that is all you are getting. And that is where this story ends, folks. What an absolute ride.